My name's Ari, and I am a recovered alcoholic. I'm 35 years old, and I'm from Farmington Hills, Michigan. I'm here to tell you my story. When I was little, when I was young, when I was a child, there was always something different about me. Always. I felt it deep, deep down inside that there was something different about me. When I was 6 years old, and all the other kids were out at recess playing, I was being held in because I was always a bad kid. Always had to have attention on me, always getting in trouble. There was just something different about me. And it just started, my family saw it when I was very young. I come from a family where my parents got divorced at the age of 7, and at the age of 6, they started me going to psychiatrists, psychologists, therapists, social workers, the whole thing, and they were spinning their wheels with me because I was so young. They couldn't label me. They didn't know what I was. I wasn't depressed. I didn't have anxiety. It wasn't any of that. I was an addict alcoholic, but I was 6 years old, so they couldn't label me that. But I had all the behaviors, always the class clown, always the attention on me, that kind of thing. So they didn't know what to do with me. At the age of 7, they started putting me on ADD medications, a young age. I mean, I remember I was young, and they put me on Concerta, what was the other one? Concerta, not Adderall, Paxil, all these different medications made me feel horrible when I was a kid. So my parents got divorced when I was 7. I come from a good family. I mean, my family's crazy like everyone else's, but a good family. And, you know, by the age of 14 is when I started when I discovered marijuana. That's when I started to get high. And instantly, I felt like I fit in. See, when I was a kid, before that, 6 years old, 7 years old, 8 years old, I looked out in the world and I felt like everybody in the world, in class, in school, knew what was going on except me. Deep inside me, it was like sheer terror. I was in so much fear. It felt like everybody in class knew what they wanted to be when they grew up, but I didn't know. It felt like everyone in class knew what was going on, but I didn't know. I was terrified. I felt like when I played sports with kids, everybody knew what was going on in the game, but I was like totally intimidated and terrified. And see, that might be normal for a kid to feel scared like that, but for an addict alcoholic, everything's like times 10. Fear, it's like times 10. Resentment, it's like times 10. See, my girlfriend, we could get in a fight, and an hour later, she's not thinking about it anymore, you know, moved on with her life. I'm thinking about it the next day. See, the alcoholic lives in his head. Super noisy up there. So I grew up with nothing but sheer terror, fear. That's how I felt inside. So I'm a guy who it took me 4 different high schools to graduate. So when I was 14, I went to public school. I discovered marijuana, and instantly, I didn't even get high for about 5 or 6 times. I was at a Halloween party, I smoked. I lied, I said I was high. I lied to fit in because it felt like I finally, like the fear was lifted from me. It felt like I belonged to something. That's how it felt to me. It was like I had an identity. I could be a druggie. And right away, I was like, this is it for me. 14 years old, smoking weed now, not even getting high for 5 or 6 times. And it just felt right. That's how it felt to me. Right away, I knew I want to do this again. Even though I didn't feel it, I just pretended to. By the age of 15, I started becoming infatuated and obsessed with mind-altering substances. There's a website, I don't even know if it's still around, I assume it is, called Heroin. And what I used to do is I used to go in my dad's room, and my family, they're not addicts or alcoholics. I have some, like I have eating disorder in my family. I have an uncle who is, who is an addict, who's sober now. Anyway, the point is, I used to run in my dad's room because he's not an addict or alcoholic. He'd have pain pills in there from surgeries or whatever the heck he had, never used. I would run back in my room, go on the internet, look up what this pill did on on that website at this dose and people's experiences. I was infatuated. I was just obsessed with what mind-altering substances is. So I was taking opiates at 15, and I know I was a real addict, looking back. I was cool to get high by myself. It wasn't just about social fitting in, this or that. From the start, I was always fine getting high by myself. So I would, just be consumed with these mind-altering substances. I was obsessed with, Xanax bars, opiates. I didn't even know really what I was taking, but I'd see these other people's experiences with this dose anyway. So by 15, I got sent away to I woke up one morning. I went to high school for a year and a half. I came home one day. My parents were together in the house, even though they were divorced. They said, we're sending you to boarding school. They had my stuff packed. They sent me to a boarding school in Arizona. I stayed there for a year. It was like a party, got high, all that. And then I got expelled finally for hooking up with girls there, got caught, and for getting high, got caught with marijuana. So anyway, I got expelled from there, came home. My dad spent all his money on the school. Went back to public school for 6 months. I woke up one morning at like 4:20 in the morning with 2 escorts by my bed. Not the good kind of escort. 2 big old like ex-cops. And they said, we can do this the easy way or we could do this the hard way. And they said, you're going to a program in Texas, another school. And I was like, oh shoot, because I still kept getting high and all that. And I said to the escorts taking me there, my dad hired these 2 guys to drag me to this school in Texas. And I said, how long is the program? And they said, it's 30 days if you're good. I said, let's go. 30 days, I'll be back selling dope again, all that. So I went to the school and I walked in there and they threw an orange jumpsuit at me, a school north of Houston in Conroe, Texas. And they said, this is an 18 to 24 month program. And I said, okay. And I ended up staying there for 16 and a half months. I stayed there for a year and a half, and I graduated high school from there. And I thank God now looking back for that place. And that place was extremely abusive. It's now shut down for abusing kids. It was a crazy place. I don't blame my family. They didn't know what to do with me. And that the kids there, it got shut down. Some kid was sexually assaulted. And I made a video about it actually. But anyway, so I thank God because I wouldn't have graduated high school probably if it weren't for that place. So I stuck it out there. Then I came home. See, I'm a kind of guy, when I start drinking and getting high, it becomes every little part of my life. I can't drink and get high I can't do drugs without selling drugs. And I can't sell drugs without getting caught selling drugs. So now I start getting arrested. I come home from that boarding school, stayed sober a few months, and And then I started getting high again. And I started going full force. I'm an untreated alcoholic, selling dope, all this. Got arrested for the first time when I was 18. By 19, I'd had 3 arrests. And by the age of 20, I've been arrested 6 times. And I was on 4 probations. 2 of them I got off of already. On one time, I was on 4 probations. And I just kept violating probation, violating probation. I have a lawyer who is my cousin, one of the best lawyers in the area, best criminal defense attorneys, if not the best. I was blessed with him. He kept getting me out of these situations. I'd violate probation. He'd get me to go to treatment center. I'd violate, screw up at the treatment center, get kicked out. He'd get me into another treatment center, this and that. And I kept getting these violations for, I kept getting these charges, DUIs, domestic violence, possession of drugs, sales of drugs, felonies, misdemeanors, you name it. I was on I had 6 charges, 4 probations at one time. I have a judge here in Farmington Hills I went in front of for 36 probation violations. Now that doesn't mean that I went in front of him 36 different times. If any of you have been through the legal system, you know they tack on like 6 violations at once. That's how they do it here. And so I would go in front of him, and he'd read me all my violations that time. Not going to the AA meetings, getting my sheet signed, not obtaining an AA sponsor, failing a drug test. I had the ankle tether for the alcohol tether. I failed that because I decided to get slick and drink on it, yada, yada. So I went in front of him like 6 different times for violations. My lawyer kept getting me out. So there was a new law in Michigan at the time. If any of you know about the legal system, there's state prison and there's county jail. Okay, this is how it is in just about every state. County jail you can go to for up to 1 year. Okay, that's for a misdemeanor. You can't, the only other reason you can be in county jail, up to, what I'm going to say is you can go to county jail here up to a year. Anything past that, a year, if you get sentenced to more than a year, you're going to state prison. So I had done county jail time here, 10 days here, I did 90 days here, yada, yada. So there was a new law in Michigan at the time. And the law stated, this is what the law stated. It said, if you have more than 1 probation in a court and you violate, the judge had the authority to not only give you the 1 full year for the 1 case, he was able to give you a 2nd full year running consecutively, not concurrent, for the 2nd case. Meaning, the law in Michigan at that time stated that you could do up to 2 years in county jail. So on the 36th violation of probation, I went in front of that judge, and that judge said to me, and my lawyer, he said, your client is now making us look stupid. I cannot keep letting him walk out of this courtroom. He said, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to set it in stone today, that if your client has 1 more probation violation in my court, I'm giving him the full 2 years in county jail. Now, if you know anything about county jail versus state prison, county jail sucks compared to state prison. I hadn't been to prison at that time, but county jail sucks compared to state prison. So I said, okay, I felt like I was winning. I got over on him one more time. Got over on him. Now I can walk out of the court and go back to the sober living I was at, called Dawn Farms in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and just get away with murder again, selling this, selling that, doing that. I was doing all the shady stuff in the sober living house, yada, yada. I was throwing concerts at the time in Detroit, club parties. I threw club parties for Royce the 5'9", I put him and D12 together on stage. I would do all the Detroit rappers. I used to throw those parties, a lot of them, and those club events, and promote these shows and put it together, rent the venue, do the whole thing. I was doing that from the sober living. So it was a party lifestyle. It wasn't a sober lifestyle. And so anyway, what happened was, about a week later, after walking out of that courtroom, I did something stupid, something illegal. I did something really stupid. What did I do? I scammed I had a taxi driver drive me somewhere like 40 minutes from Ann Arbor back to my hometown, and I scammed him, I think, without paying, and he knew the sober living that I was at because he picked me up from around the corner and got a hold of the sober living house manager, and the house manager called my probation officer, and the probation officer called me and said, Mr. Levin, you have a probation violation hearing next Tuesday. We expect you in court. This was a week after they let me out, that they said I had one more chance. I called my lawyer. I said, are you available Tuesday? I had just violated again. I said, what does this mean? I acted like I didn't know what this meant. He said, it means you're going to be sitting for a while. 2 dang years. And if you, and in Michigan, you get 5 days off for each month good time. So that means you do a full 20 months. 10 months on every year in county. That's how it was. So I had the weekend for my disease to run wild. I mean, I walked out of that court. I'm an untreated alcoholic. I'm untreated. Of course I was going to violate. I was destined to violate. My disease hasn't been treated yet. So I had the weekend for my disease to go crazy, me to get my affairs in order before going to jail. My family is absolutely disgusted with me. And I was going to jail. I was going to do 2 years. I was ready. I woke up that morning, that Tuesday, went wild for the weekend, did whatever. Woke up that morning. I said to myself, there is no way in heck I am going to jail today for 2 years. I called my friend. I had him pick me up. The judge was at court. My lawyer was at court. My whole family was at court there to see me off. And I didn't show up. And I got on a Greyhound and skipped town. And I ended up in Los Angeles, California. First I went to Texas for 3 months because that was the boarding school I went to, so I had some connections over there, people who housed me. Stayed there for 3 months, and then I went to LA, ended up in LA. I got off the bus in LA, I remember thinking, man, I can breathe. You know, my family's not talking to me, they're saying, we're not gonna talk to you till you turn yourself in. I said, man, I can breathe. I made it. I'm in LA now. I don't know anyone in LA. One person I knew there from here. I said, man, I could do anything I want here. And this is LA. They're so busy. They'll never catch me here doing anything. Far enough from home. They're not going to pick me up from Michigan, yada, yada. It took me 10 days before my first arrest in Los Angeles. 10 days. I was living at this guy's apartment in Studio City. He was being under surveillance. He was selling dope. I was in a dope house, essentially. They kicked the door in, and they took me away to the Twin Towers, Los Angeles County Jail. And I thought I was hard, homie. I'd been to, jails in Michigan. Oh, Oakland County Jail. Oh, this jail, So I'm there riding with the guy on the bus whose dope house it was that got kicked in. And I said to him, what's jail like here in LA? I wasn't really sweating it. He said, it's like hell. I didn't understand what that meant at the time. So So I go in the jail through processing, and then the other inmates come up to me, and they say, "What are you?" What am I? What does that mean? What are you? You Hispanic? You a Peckerwood, white boy? You know, you're not black. What are you? I said, I'm white. They're like, okay, you're over there with them. The whole jail system out west is racially segregated. It was like a surreal world. It was hell. Absolutely horrible. There is no jail I can imagine in the country as bad as LA County Jail. Now you might say Riker, I don't know about all that. There's no place I've ever been in my life as bad as LA County Jail was. Now they tried to get, there's a saying out there in California. They say, come on vacation, leave on probation. So they tried to send me to prison for being in that dope house. Prison. That's the way it works out there. They basically try and wear you down as much as they can, where they say, we're going to send you to prison for 3 years. And you say, no, I'm not going to take that deal. I'll go to trial. I'm not going to take that deal. And they send you back to jail, schedule you a court date for another 30 days. You sit in jail for 30 days, take you back. Okay, we're going to send you to prison for 2 years. No, I don't want that deal. Send you back to jail and that's their game. They do it with everybody, unless you can bail out and afford a lawyer. But I had nothing. So the point is, I was in a predicament there in LA County Jail. See, I rolled with the white boys, but see, I'm Jewish, and a lot of the white boys out there are actually skinheads. So the people who are supposed to have my back, a lot of them also hated me, but they had to have my back because I was white. It was a very weird situation, but you're seeing the theme here of fear, terror. That's how my life was run on, sheer terror. So they let me out on probation, of course. They gave me the deal after fighting for almost 6 months in jail. What was it, 6 months, 3 months that time maybe, 3 or 4 months, I think. 4 months, they let me out. Now I'm stuck in LA because I'm on felony probation there for these 2 charges, for being at that dope house. So, let me just say this, man. By the time I was 18, before I went to LA, it's when I discovered heroin. I didn't mention that. And I was hooked on it, man. I loved heroin. I did heroin on and off from 18, and then, you know, got off it for a while, then came to California. I was a heroin addict, man. IV heroin user, and later became a IV meth user. And regular, you know, all kinds of meth. Not just IV, I mean, I started smoking it and turned into a, you know, IV heroin, IV meth user, man. My disease, just to give you a picture now of where it took me, I ended up in LA over 7 years, man. I think close to 8 years. My disease took me to 20 different treatment centers, 20, from rehab, sober livings, detoxes, all of that, 20. I have been arrested 20 times. I have felonies, misdemeanor, all sorts of arrests. I have been to county jail in 3 states, Michigan, Texas, and California, and I have been to 2 different state prisons in California. I thought that, you know, for a long time I was living good out there in LA. What I thought was living good doesn't compare anything to the life I have today. You know, I had an apartment, 2 different apartments in Santa Monica, selling dope, pimping women. I was in the porn industry for about 6 years. I dated for 2 years one of the most famous porn stars in the world. The way I lived was absolutely disgusting. I spent my whole life trying to be Mr. Cool Guy. And things, I thought were amazing, to the point where things got so bad, so bad, that I was living out of $30 a night motels off the Social Security, would give hotel vouchers, literally taking 36 pennies out of a fountain in front of one of those motels just to buy a pack of ramen noodles because I was so hungry. Hunger pains, like I can never describe ever. Hunger pains. Over 7 years in LA living like this, craziness, insanity. I can never, ever sum it up in this video, how insane it was. The life that I came from. In and out of the hospital from overdoses, staph infections with MRSA from my IV drug use all up and down my body, abscesses that I had to check myself in on multiple times to Cedars-Sinai Hospital for a week for them to try and save my life with vancomycin IV antibiotics for my staph infections. Getting heroin snuck in to the hospital while they're treating me for abscesses because I was such a horrible, die-hard dope fiend. Nothing was going to get in the way of me getting high. Nothing. So that's how I spent my time in LA. Prisons, on the streets. Literally, I've slept on the streets of Koreatown. Insane. Insanity. Living good for a while in apartments, thinking I'm balling out of control. I had this idea I was going to ball so hard. My idea, this is how crazy my thinking is. Let me just tell you. This makes sense to me. This is the addict. See, my disease centers in my head. So my plans also center in my head, right? So the thinking told me, Ari, you're going to run away. You're going to run away from home. You're going to go out to LA and you're going to ball out of control and make all this money and just send it back to the judges there, like the court systems, and squash those cases and then come home like nothing ever happened. That was my plan. That sounded like it would actually work to me. That's how crazy I was, out of my mind. Anyway, there's two things that we need to get sober. Two things that I need to get sober. Two questions I have to ask myself. Number one, am I ready to be done for good? Am I ready to be done for good? That's the first question. You see, you've heard maybe in AA they say sayings like one day at a time. That's not AA. I cannot stay. There are enough one-liners in AA to kill everybody. One day at a time means, oh, I'm struggling just to get through one more day. I'm struggling. That's the idea that I hear when I hear one day at a time. Oh, 1 minute at a time. You heard that one? One day at a time. Like it's just a struggle to get through each day. That's not what sobriety's about. Sobriety is the biggest gift I've ever received in my life, hands down. Sobriety is not a struggle, it's a gift. It's okay to say you're done for good. See, if that's your disease telling you, oh, I can't say I'm done for good, what if I get high? That's the disease not wanting you to treat it. See, alcoholism is one of the most deadly diseases ever because it tells you you don't have a disease. So am I ready to be done for good? There's so many one-liners in AA, I hate it. Easy does it. Take your time, you know. It's crazy, man. So, am I ready to be done for good? And number two, the second question. Am I willing to do whatever it takes? Willingness. Whatever it takes. Something happened in my life where I met those two questions. And I was ready to be done for good, and I was willing to do whatever it takes. After all of that craziness, finally, 20 treatment centers, jails, prisons, I even died. I flatlined from overdoses. See, I used to go to rehabs and jail and prison, and they used to say the same thing. When you get out, you go get a sponsor, you go to meetings. When you get out, you get a sponsor, you go to meetings. Meetings, 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 meetings. That's all I'd hear. Meeting makers make it. All I'd heard about is meetings. I'd go to meetings. I went to so many freaking meetings, and I continued to stay sick. Why is that? How is it that I went to all these AA and NA meetings and I stayed sick if that's the way you treat this disease? Come to find out, meetings is not the treatment for my disease. And I'm going to talk about what is. So yeah, I was ready to be done for good. I was willing to do whatever it takes. My brother ended up, I made a whole video about it. My brother ended up in California at the exact moment where I had nothing left out there, and he brought me home. Now, my first day back home, my dad agreed to take me in the house. My brother called my dad. He said, it's time we get Ari back home. My dad said, okay. I was going to die. I was going to die. The first day I came back home, I went to see my doctor. I had a staph infection at the time. I rode a Greyhound bus home, and my brother put me on a bus, sent me home. First day back, I went to see my doctor because I was going to detox off heroin and meth, and I needed to fight a staph infection. Something was already different about me. There was Ari was already different right then. Because see, the old Ari tells the doctor what I need. I'm the doctor. Oh, I need this much Suboxone, this much, this, yeah. I know everything. I know it all. See, I have a doctor. I'm going to let him do his job now. He prescribed me the medications he told me I need to come off drugs. He gave me antibiotics to fight the staph infection. He gave me the proper medications to come off. It was minimal. He gave me Suboxone, and he gave me blood pressure medication and a very low dose of Klonopin for nighttime or something, which none of them I stayed on more than 30 days. I was determined. I knew in the deepest place in my heart that I was done. I wasn't, some of you, your doctors might have you stay on Suboxone and these opioid detox medications for years. I want to be on and off of. That's not, I'm going to treat this disease. I don't need that kind of stuff. So I used it for its purpose to get off, and that was it. Now, my second day back, I didn't know much, but I knew in my heart I was supposed to be at an AA meeting. I was guided there. It was like God already stepped in. So I went to this AA meeting that I remember. It was at Temple, Israel in West Bloomfield, Michigan. I remember from years ago, long before LA, that there was like a solid group of old timers there. They, you know, I used to talk out of the side of my neck, but there were some good people there. And I walked in that meeting, and I must have looked sick. Second day home, just starting to detox, hoping these medications kick in, yada, yada. I sat down there, must have looked sick as a dog. And I don't know if any of you ever heard it. When you go to a meeting, you have to raise your hand and ask for a sponsor. You have to find a sponsor. That's horrible. That's not real AA. I sat there, and someone walked up to me. And they didn't even ask me. They said, I'm going to sponsor you. I was like, oh my God, you are? And I accepted that. And this person is still my sponsor today. See, that's horrible. All of these years, I had gone to AA meetings, NA meetings, and all these people, they could have 2 years of sobriety, 5 years of sobriety, 10 years of sobriety. Nobody ever once offered themselves to me and said, I'm going to sponsor you. But the first meeting that I went to, after I was ready to be done for good and willing to do whatever it takes, the person was right there who offered himself to me. And that showed me what real AA was about. about offering myself to people. They just let me pass right on by all these people. Never once said, I'll show you how I got well. I'll show you how I recovered, how I got past this disease. First meeting home, somebody came to me and said, I'm going to sponsor you. He's still my sponsor today. So we sat through that meeting. I don't remember what was said at that meeting. And after the meeting, I got stepped aside with him, and we got exchanged phone numbers. And he said two things to me I'll never forget. He said, you see where we're at right now? I said, yeah. He said, where are we? I said, what do you mean, where are we? We're at AA. He said, no, we're not. I said, what do you mean, no, we're not? He said, this isn't AA. He said, this is just an AA meeting. This is just the fellowship of AA. Then he showed me this book. He said, this is AA. See, it says it right there, Alcoholics Anonymous. AA is a book. It's a spiritual 12-step program of action laid out in this book. Everything I thought I knew just shattered right in front of me. Just shattered. I thought AA was about sitting at a table for an hour a day. That's what I thought AA was. And that's why so many people don't get sober. Because they think they sit at a table and nothing happens. And they say, AA didn't work for me. But they didn't follow the instructions in this book. So the second thing he said to me, he said, if I ever tell you something that doesn't line up with what's in this book, you disregard it. Always by the book. So the first thing that happens when I open this book, I had never been in this book, so I never touched AA. It says the story of how many thousands of men and women have recovered from alcoholism. Recovered. They use the word recovered. See, all of these years I had gone to these meetings and I heard, you never recover. You're always recovering. And the book says different. I have recovered. What does that mean to recover? Does that mean that I've recovered control of my using drugs and alcohol? Absolutely not. Of course not. That means I've recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind. That means that I'm no longer powerless over drugs and alcohol. That's what it means when you recover. And that's a message of hope right there. And I always say I'm a recovered alcoholic because I want other people to know that they can get well. Why would I go to all those treatment centers and AA and all that if I can never get well, if I can never recover, if I'm always going to stay sick? That means that God has lifted my obsession to drink and get high. That's what it means to recover. So there's a step in here most people don't know before even the first step, or the real first step. It says we have to concede to our innermost selves that we were alcoholics. This is the first step of recovery. Concede to our innermost self. That means that I have to look deep down, the deepest place within myself, and decide, is that me? Am I a real addict or alcoholic? Why is that important? This might blow your mind. Not everyone in AA is a real addict or alcoholic. There are a lot of heavy drinkers in AA. And they might have been sent there by the courts. They might have been, they might think they're a real alcoholic. But not everyone in an AA meeting is a real alcoholic. So you have to decide for you. Do I have that alcoholism, the physical and the mental, and the spiritual? So the physical, when I ingest drugs or alcohol, something different happens to me than a heavy drinker or a social drinker. My body reacts to that as though it's an allergy. And that allergy comes out in the form of craving, and I no longer have the power of choice to stop. So once I ingest alcohol or drugs, game over. I'm completely powerless. Then there's the mental. The mental is when I don't have drugs or alcohol, I'm obsessing on drugs or alcohol. So just having a DUI does not make you an alcoholic. Blacking out, beating your wife, cheating on her alone, just that, does not make you an alcoholic. You have to have the physical, the allergy, and the mental obsession for you to be an alcoholic. Now, I conceded, I decided that's me, I'm an alcoholic, and then I move forward. So we open up the book here to page 60. So we're in how it works. This is the beginning of the 12 steps. So it says here, I got 3 questions. It says A, that we were alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. Am I convinced of this? Yes, I am convinced. I'm alcoholic and cannot manage my own life. That B, probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism. Yes, I'm convinced that probably no human power could relieve. Not therapy, not a treatment center, not an AA meeting, because that's just humans. No human power could relieve my alcoholism. And C, that God could and would if he were sought. Then it says, being convinced, we were at step 3. So if I'm convinced of those 3 things I just read, I'm already at step 3. That's how fast step 1 and 2 goes. Step 3 is a prayer. And the prayer, it says here, we were now at step 3. Many of us said to our Maker as we understood him, God, I offer myself to thee to build with me and to do with me as you will. Relieve me of the bondage of self that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do your will always. And we don't say amen at the end, because amen finalizes the prayer. This prayer stays open, and now we let God carry us through. Everything in this book that they do is important. See, this book, what this book is, this book was written by the first 100 people back in the 1930s who recovered from alcoholism, sharing their experience with us, hoping that we can use their experience so we too can recover. So basically, if we do what they did, we'll get what they got. But I can't take this book and change it and say, oh, I'm going to do it my sponsor's way. It's like taking a box of cake and you want to change the ingredients a little bit, add a little more sugar, take away this, and then it gets done cooking, and you look at it and you say, well, that doesn't look like the cake on the box. Well, you didn't follow the instructions. These are not open for debate. The instructions in this book are clear-cut and precise. That means there's not my sponsor's way, his sponsor's way. There's only the book's way. And that's the way I take people through it, just by the book. So anyway, so I say that prayer, and it says we thought well before taking this step, making sure we were ready, that we could at last abandon ourselves utterly to him. This prayer is a contract with God. And the contract is that I'm going to move forward at once, which means right away, to do the rest of the steps. So now it's up to me to follow through with that contract. So that means that I can't wait between doing this prayer and moving on to step 4. Because every minute that I wait gives my disease a chance to destroy me and say, you don't need to do this. Take your time. Easy does it. You know, all that. So I move forward at once, and the book tells me this. And I just want you to know, I said that prayer. I said it at that temple, Israel, the place I met my sponsor. 2 weeks after I was sober, we stayed after the meeting, and I said the prayer. He had me write out the prayer. That's what it tells you to do. In your own words, as long as you keep the meaning. So I changed it. Instead of God, I offer myself to thee, it was like, God, I offer myself to you. You know, words that I could understand. It was written a long time ago. So I said the prayer, and I walked out of that temple, and I haven't had a feeling to drink or get high one time since then. It was amazing. Therefore, we started upon I recovered from alcoholism the moment I said that prayer, because I said it from the heart. And I stuck to the contract and followed through with the rest of the steps at once. Now, not everybody has that experience where they recover like that, like in that second. That's called kind of a white lightning experience, the book describes. And actually, the writer, Bill Wilson, of this book had the same experience. But the book promises you will recover if you follow through with the rest of the steps. I've never seen it fail. When we come to the fourth step here, it says resentment is the #1 offender. It destroys more alcoholics than anything else. Resentment, anger, destroys more alcoholics than anything else. From its stem, all form of spiritual disease. We have been spiritually sick. It says, for we have not only been mentally and physically ill, we have been spiritually sick. Resentment, anger, the #1 thing that destroys me. So the first thing I have to do in my step 4, I have to get out a pen and paper, and I have to make 3 columns, just like the book has here. 3 columns, you could see. The first column, I'm resentful at. Who am I resentful at? The cause. Why am I resentful? And 3, how it affects me. I'm resentful at my ex-girlfriend. She cheated on me. How it affects me. Sex relations, self-esteem, personal relationships, yada, yada. I make the list. It doesn't matter if you have 1 page of resentments or 100 pages. The book says we went back through our lives. Our whole life we have to write down these resentments. Nothing counted but thoroughness and honesty. That's the only thing that matters when it comes to these resentments. So I've spent this whole time now, and it took me, now I'm about 5 weeks sober, and I'm finishing this list of resentments. Just to give you a timeline of where I was. You know, that's where I was 5 weeks sober, finishing this list of resentments. I had worked from the bottom of my heart. I had a ton of pages of resentments. I thought I was one of these alcoholics who, I don't hold a grudge. Once I started writing, it was crazy. So then, what do we do now? So if I have to, so what it says, referring to our list again, putting out of our minds the wrongs others had done. See, now I spent that whole time looking at how you've wronged me, I'm the victim, how the world wronged me, I'm angry because you cheated on me, you stole from me, you screwed me, this, that, yada, yada, poor me. Referring to our list again, putting out of our minds the wrongs others had done, we resolutely look for our own mistakes. Where had we been selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, and frightened? Though a situation had not been entirely our fault, we tried to disregard the other person involved entirely. Where were we to blame? The inventory was ours, not the other man's. When we saw our faults, we listed them. We placed them before us in black and white. We admitted the wrongs honestly, and were willing to set these matters straight. That's the 4th column they're explaining. I've spent the whole time looking out at you. If I want to, these resentments are the #1 things that kills me. I have to find my part in them and realize that I got the ball rolling for everything that happened in my life. So I have to go through each one of those resentments on my list and look at what my part was. Where was I to blame? For the first time in my life, I have to look deep within myself. Now I remember I was in my sponsor's car after an AA meeting, and he was explaining this 4th column to me. I told him I was done with the first 3, it's time for the 4th. He explained it to me. I said, if I have any problems finding my part in any of these resentments, I said, I'm going to give you a call. He said, no, you're not. He said, if you find you have a problem finding your part, you're going to give God a call. And then you're going to sit there and you're going to listen for the answer. And if you can't find it then you can give me a call. See, that's why my sponsor's amazing, because he's by the book. God first, sponsor second. Our real reliance is always on God, not on our sponsor. So I'm like 4 pages in these resentments, and I'm flying by. I see my part in all these resentments so far. And I get to this part. I didn't tell you this, but my mom had brain cancer. When I was 18, I came home from the boarding school. She got diagnosed with brain cancer. And she passed 3 years later. She fought. She had multiple brain surgeries, chemo, radiation, and my mother passed of brain cancer. Now, she had been seeing this guy for years, 10 years. And as soon as she got brain cancer, he split on her, left her. Didn't care, just left, couldn't handle it while she was sick with brain cancer. Now, I had a resentment against him, that he was a scumbag for doing this. Thought it was justified. And for the life of me, I could not find my part in that. What do I have to do with that? It's between him and my mom. He screwed her over. I'm resentful about it. I don't have a part in that. I'm almost going to make something up just to move past. And I remember what my sponsor, if you have a problem finding your part, you call God. This was one of the just first few times where I prayed from the deepest place. I said, God, I cannot see my resentment in this. I cannot see my part in this resentment. Please show me my part. I sat back and I listened to my heart, and I heard the answer clear as day. It said, Ari, you weren't there for your mom when she was sick. And it hit me like the deepest moment ever. That was my part. I was mad at this guy for doing something that I did myself. When my mom was sick, I was getting high on heroin. I was sneaking in the house, stealing her hospice medication, pretending I was coming around, that I cared. I was out of my mind, spiritually, physically sick. And I was mad at him because he didn't hang around when I did the exact same thing. I knew at that moment I would have no problem finding my part in any of these resentments, that God was now guiding me through this process. I knew it. See, I get fired up when I talk about this stuff. If you're not fired up when you're talking about something like this, then something's missing. You should be feeling these steps if you're an addict or alcoholic like me. So I move forward. So the next thing it says, notice the word fear is bracketed. Fear. Fear is the next part. We have to make a list of all our fears. I told you the addict alcoholic is riddled with fear. It's shot through us like shot through our fabric of our existence like an evil and corroded thread, the book tells me. So I make a list of my fears. It's like a page. Then my sex inventory. I make a list of how I mistreated women. Where was I selfish, dishonest, unjustifiably aroused jealousy? Make a list of all my sexual conduct that I can remember, how I treated women. Then it's time for the fifth step. So I sit there with my sponsor and I start reading him all my resentments and my part in things. I think I'm blowing his mind. Oh my God, he probably had no idea who he dealt with. You know, I'm 6 weeks sober now, just getting to know each other. We sat at my dad's house. And then he was patient. We talked for hours. Step 5, where I share this list with him. Admitted to God. Listen, I'll read to you the exact step as it's called. It says here, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. I sat there with my sponsor for hours, reading him all. He never rushed me or anything. When I'm reading him my part, he says, how about fear? I said, oh yeah, fear was part of that. Second one, I left out fear. He says, how about fear? So I write in fear. I write fear for everything on how it affects me. I left fear out. It was in step 5 where I learned how much fear I was running on. I thought this whole time, oh my God, ran away, I've been to prisons, I ran to California, I lived on the streets, that I had no fear. Come to find out, I did all that running because of fear. I was terrified. And this is when I discovered it. So moving forward, so I read them, my resentments, my part in it, the fears. Then I get to the sex inventory. And my sponsor says, I don't need to hear that. I says, what do you mean you don't need to hear that? I said, I want to do it by the book. He says, listen. He says, I now know in my heart that you have a relationship with God. You know how you've treated women in the past, and now it's up to you to make a contract with God that you're not going to treat women like that anymore, and it's up to you to honor that contract. These were deep moments in my journey through these 12 steps. Deep moments, because this whole thing I thought I knew about AA, it's all about one thing, and it's my relationship with God, and that is the only thing I have in between me and taking another drink or drug. How tight is my relationship with God, my spirituality? It has nothing to do with how many AA meetings I go to a day, or how many pages of the book I read, or some gratitude list I wrote. It's all about me and God. That is the only thing I have standing in between me and another drink or drug, is God. And that's it. So I move forward. And now it's time for steps 6 and 7. I'm into action now. We're cruising through these steps, huh? We're cruising through them. So, what I'm going to say is, step 6, if we can answer to our satisfaction that we return home, we find a quiet place for an hour after doing step 5. We thank God from the bottom of our hearts that we now know Him better, and we look to make sure we didn't leave anything out. And if we're satisfied, we move to step 6. Are we now ready to let God remove all of the things which we had admitted are objectionable? In step 5, I've discovered my selfishness, my resentments, my fear, my dishonesty. They were all problems of my own making. Are we now ready to let God remove all these things? If so, we move to step 7 immediately. See, these steps move quickly. Don't listen to people who say, oh, take a year on step 1, take a year on step. Move through them quickly. If you have cancer and a doctor says, I'm going to treat it, are you going to say, oh, I'm going to take my time with this? No, you're not. You're going to treat it immediately. And that's the same with this disease. These steps move fast. The people who wrote this book, they were on step 9 in like 2 or 3 days, running around town making amends with people. Never looked back. That's why the success rate was so high then. It was about 100% probably, when now it's like 1%. Because everybody thinks the AA meetings are the treatment and the program, and they don't follow the instructions out of this book and stick to their contract. Anyway, so the step 7, it's not even a step, it's just a prayer. And you wouldn't know that unless you dig into this book and study it. This is a textbook. A textbook is not meant to just hand to somebody and say, here, read this through. A textbook's meant to be studied with someone who's been through it. Step 7, the prayer is, my Creator, I am now willing that you shall have all of me, good and bad. I pray that you now remove from me every single defect of character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and to my fellows. God, grant me strength as I go on from here to do your bidding. Amen. I'm not asking God to remove all my defects of character. I'm asking God to remove the ones that stand in the way of me being useful to Him and to my fellows. That means there's still going to be defects after this. I'm still going to be in fear, dishonest. We're going to talk about it. It says now we need more actions. Now we're on step 8 and 9. They go together. Step 8. Made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. Step 9. Made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. Now I used to look at this in rehabs. They'd always have the 12 steps listed somewhere. And I'd say, one day I'm going to get to that step 8. I'm going to make a list of all these people I've hurt and go out and make it right, and make amends. It's amazing how the book works. What is it? Man plans, God laughs. The book says, Let's look at step 8 and 9. We have a list of all persons we have harmed and to whom we were willing to make amends. We made it when we took inventory. See, step 4, that list I made of resentments and everything, told me that that list holds a key to my future. A key to my future. Now, that means when I got to step 9, I already had the list of all the people I had harmed. I just have to pull the names. There was no more thinking involved. That's how perfectly this works out. So now I have the list. And I was thinking, I'm just going to run around town and make amends and hit people up on Facebook and say, sorry, I banged your girl and stole your wallet. And blah, blah, blah. It's not how it worked. I have a list, and my sponsor said we're going to go through each name separately. First person on my list was my dad. So we talked about how to properly make amends to my dad. I'm now 3 months sober, just to give you a timeline of where I was at. 3 months sober. I told my dad, I want to talk to you. And I brought him to our synagogue. And I sat him down there at the synagogue after work one day. I was working with him. And I said, Dad, I brought you here because this is a place where I feel close to you, and I also feel close to my spirituality. I said, for one reason or another, I never decided to treat my disease of alcoholism and addiction. And as you know now, I am treating it. And I bring you here to make amends to you. And these are my amends in words, but my real amends are in my actions. And I'm never going to treat you the way that I did before. And he accepted my amends, and it was beautiful. And that's how amends are made. They're really through your actions, through going through these steps and changing who you are. Certain people I'm not going to make amends to. I'm not going to go and pay back drug dealers I owe, or go to women who I've hurt who have husbands now and make the situation worse. I'm not going to do that. That's why I have a good sponsor to go through each one of these with. I made amends to my brother. I wrote handwritten letters to people. Not everybody might accept your amends. If you owe someone money, they still might say, hey, where's the money? And you have to deal with that between you and God and your sponsor. Now, my mom had passed away, as I told you. She never got to see me recover from alcoholism. So how was I going to make amends to her? I wrote her a letter. I went to the cemetery with my sponsor. And I read her the letter. And I made amends to her, just like everyone else. And I burned the letter. And I poured the ashes on her grave. And I was able to walk away from that for the first time with my mom's death being whole, knowing what true peace really was because of these steps. This step of making amends is not always about just sitting across the table from someone and saying, I'm sorry. This took me to the cemetery to clean it up with my mom. God has blessed me beyond my wildest dreams. Now the last part of this, and I'm moving to wrap up this story here. You know, my second day back from LA, I had to go see my lawyer because remember, I ran away from Michigan. I still had all those warrants out for my arrest. And my lawyer said, listen, I need you to get healthy. I mean, I look sucked up at the time. I weigh 172 now. I must have been 128 pounds, meth. He said, you have to get healthy, go to counseling. I went and saw a counselor, go to AA, all that, get well, and then we'll talk about. This is how God works. As soon as I got to step 9 to make amends, my lawyer called and said, Ari, we're now ready to go deal with the legal stuff. Basically, what I heard is make amends with the court system. He didn't call me because someone said, oh, Ari's on step 9, you better call him so he can clean up. That's just how perfectly it works out. So my lawyer called me, And it was time to go make amends and clean up the past. See, I told you I was willing to do anything it takes. I had felony warrants out. So I walked into the first court, and the judge was there. My old probation officer was there. This is the court where I had misdemeanors in Farmington Hills here, multiple misdemeanors, and that I was going to do the 2 years in. And so that I was waiting to do the time. And, you know, who knew what was going to happen there? And me and my sponsor held hands before walking in. And we said the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. About 5 minutes later, he said, is that prayer wearing off yet? And I said, yeah. And he said, let's say it again. So we said it again. He said, you're here to clean up the past, right? I said, yes, I am. He said, it's going to be okay. I was nervous, but it's okay. I knew I had God with me, and I knew I had my family with me. My counselor was there. Everybody was there to support me. So I went in front of that judge, and my lawyer spoke to him, and then my sponsor went up and went to bat for me and spoke to him. Told him about the changes he's seen in me as a result of working the steps. Told him how I went to the cemetery to make amends with my mom. Told him how I'm helping addicts and alcoholics. Told him everything. The judge said, I'm going to let you walk out of here today, because I still had to go to the other court in Livingston County where I had felonies and I was looking to go to prison. The judge said, I'm going to let you walk out of here today and let you turn yourself in to Livingston County. Whatever they decide to do with you, I'm going to go with it. If they want to give you jail time, prison time, I'm going to go with it, and I'll run it like that. If they want to squash it, I'll squash it here. Either way, I'm going to go with what they decide to do. I walked out of there like, oh my God. I was going to do 2 years in front of that judge. I walked out of there. The next day, had the same group of people with me. And I went to Livingston County, and I went in front of that judge. Judge I had felonies in front of. Right away, they took me and put me in the handcuffs, and they took me to Livingston County Jail. I did not see that coming. I sat in Livingston County Jail for a week, and they do what's called a pre-sentence investigation, where the probation department comes to interview you, and they basically see how sorry you are. And I told them the truth. I had nothing to hide anymore. And we were hoping that all those cases, prison time, all that didn't show up from California. And it did. I wasn't looking to be dishonest, but there's no reason to cause more harm to myself, so I didn't mention it. And that was between me and my sponsor and my lawyer and God. And they were advising me, and it all came up. All the prison stuff from California, everything came up. So I went in front of that judge a week after being in there for sentencing. And I got to make amends to that judge. And I told him pretty much the same stuff I told my dad and everyone else. The amends really don't change. And I spoke from the deepest place in my heart. And that judge looked at me and he said, Mr. Levin, and the probation department had recommended me going to prison. And I was prepared for that. I was ready to go to prison that day. That was okay with me because I was cleaning up the past. The probation made their recommendation to go to prison. The judge said, Mr. Levin, I would let you go today. He saw that I spoke from my heart. He said, but without order, there would be chaos. I'll never forget that. He said, so this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you 6 months in the county jail, and I'm going to take you off all probations. And I thanked God. I was so blessed. I got out of going to prison, and he took me off probations after that. And that's step 9, man. That's step 9. And I went in that jail, and I got myself a big book. I was 4 months sober now, made amends, went in jail, got a big book. And I've sponsored 10 addicts and alcoholics through those 12 steps. in jail at 4 months sober. It was the most beautiful time that I've ever done in my life. That's the power of God right there. And I know for a fact that 2 of those people who I sponsored have recovered, and now they're out there helping addicts and alcoholics. That's amazing. I was so blessed. I was scared to leave jail because I was so busy there. And my sponsor said, I'm going to put you to work when you get out, don't worry. And he put me to work. I started speaking at the treatment centers, the one treatment center in West Bloomfield, Maple Grove. I spoke up until COVID at the first Saturday of every month for over 6 years, I think. And gave a hour and 15-minute lecture to the inpatients there and met a lot of people to sponsor. I've sponsored hundreds of addicts and alcoholics now, all across the country. Anyway, so I got out of there, out of jail, and continued on. Now that's step 1 through 9 that I talked about, and I'm going to wrap this up with 10, 11, and 12. Step 1 through 9, those are steps that you do, and then you have 10, 11, and 12 that you have to always do for the rest of your life to continue treating this disease. So step 10 says, we continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. Step 10 tells me I continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. It says when these crop up. It doesn't say if they crop up in the book. It says when they crop up, meaning I will be in fear. I will be dishonest. I will be selfish. I will be resentful. What do we do about it? We ask God at once to remove it. That means God right away when I'm in fear, when I'm angry. By the way, fear is always behind anger. There's no reason to be angry unless you're scared of something, if you really look. Fear is always behind dishonesty. There is no reason in the world for me to lie unless I'm in fear of something. Think about that. So when I'm selfish, dishonest, resentment, or fearful, I ask God at once to remove it. God, please remove my fear. Please remove my resentment. Direct my attention to what you would have me be. Talk about it with someone immediately, it says. I'm not just going to talk about it with anyone. I'm going to talk about it with someone who knows how I think. That's why I have a sponsor. I call my sponsor, hey, I have a 10th step to talk to you about. He's going to say, I know you're not calling me unless you already prayed and asked God, because God's number 1, sponsor number 2, always. I say, yeah, I'm calling you because I asked God, now it's time to talk to you. We make amends quickly if we've harmed someone. Only if we've harmed someone. Then we turn our thoughts over to someone we can help. It doesn't say run out and go help someone. It says turn your thoughts over to someone you can help. That gets me away from myself. So the point is, if I'm constantly watching for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear, I'm treating it now as it's coming in, so none of this stuff builds up. And that way I don't ever have to go back and do that 4th step again. That was a one-time thing. Got rid of all the trash from the past. Now I deal with things as they crop up, one by one. And I continue to do that to keep my slate clean. The formula is perfect. So that's step 10. Step 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. Step 11 is like a clock. It starts at night. At night, it says we review our day. Sought through prayer and meditation. I can't pray. I can't meditate without praying first because my head's too noisy. So I have to ask God, please remove the noise. Please help me to stay out of my head and be in my heart so I can go through my nighttime review. There's 6 questions I ask myself every night, and it's out of the big book. Where was I selfish, dishonest, resentful, or afraid? Do I owe an apology? Have I kept something to myself which I should have discussed with someone at once? Was I kind and loving towards all? What could I have done better? And was I thinking about myself most of the time, or was I thinking about what I could do for others and what I could pack into the stream of life? That's the nighttime review, exactly out of this book. I do it every night. Every night I review my day like that. Then I say, God, this is from the book, not from my head. God, please forgive me of my shortcomings and my sins. Please help me with any corrective measures I should take for these things. Then I thank God for the day, and then I pray for others. Why do I pray for others? I don't pray for others because I think it changes anything. I already believe you're being cared for. I pray for others because praying changes me. I pray for others because my whole life was about me, more. Now it's time to think about you. What can I do for you? That's why I pray for others. See, now I can go to sleep and be rested. If you're doing this step, you're never going to get a better night's sleep than when your slate is clean and you're doing all of these steps and your soul is rested. You've tied up loose ends for the day. Then I wake up in the morning and right away, God, please direct my thinking, especially to divorce my thoughts from self-pity, self-seeking, and dishonest motives. I'm basically saying, God, please get in my head before I do for the day. Then I think about my next 24 hours. What are my plans for the day? I ask God, I have a whole bunch of prayers. Please show me the way of patience, tolerance, kindliness, and love. Please help me be kind and loving towards all. I go through the 3rd step prayer, 7-step prayer. God, please relieve me of self-will. That your will be done, not mine. Please remove my fear. Direct my attention to what you would have me be. Please help me with what I can do for the man who is still sick. So that's nighttime, that's the morning. Why I say it's a clock, because all throughout the day, I'm supposed to be relying on God. When I face indecision, when I can't make a choice, when I'm having a rough time, when fear comes up, I go to God. These steps are about strengthening my relationship with God, doing something, relying on God to solve my problems that I couldn't solve. I recovered 2 weeks after this. None of this I'm talking about is about drugs or alcohol anymore. It's about growing spiritually, becoming better. I hope you're fired up about this. This is not, only the first step talks about alcohol. Everything else I've talked about has been about resentment, fear, everything besides drugs and alcohol. This is about spiritual growth. So I can ensure never to go back to drinking or getting high again and to become the closest that I possibly can to God. So that's step 10 and 11. Then 12, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we tried to carry this message, not my message, not the treatment center's message that tells you you're going to be constantly fighting the battle your whole life, not the message that tells you play the tape back, and here's another message that I used to be told in treatment centers. Ever heard of triggers? What triggers you? We don't believe in that in real AA. There are no triggers. I'm a recovered alcoholic. I can go anywhere where I have a purpose to be. I can go to a bar and I'm not going to think about drinking or getting high. I can go where alcohol is served. There's no trigger. I'm not going to walk in a liquor store and see alcohol and, oh my God, I got to get... But I have to know my motives. I have no business being in a dope house, so I'm not going to go to a dope house. And guess what? Just because I can go to a bar or a nightclub and doesn't mean I'm going to think about drinking or getting high, I don't go to bars and nightclubs because it's not fun for me anymore. That's not the person I am anymore. So just because but the point is, there are no triggers in AA. That's what it means to be a recovered alcoholic. Nothing triggers me. God is between me and drinks and drugs, not my disease. So listen, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and practice these principles in all our affairs. That's why I'm here right now, to carry this message, not my message, this message to alcoholics so I can be helpful. That's what this is about. This is the most fulfilling thing, working with addicts and alcoholics. As I said, I've sponsored hundreds of addicts and alcoholics. Many of them have gone through these steps. I've sponsored a lot who are now sponsoring other addicts and alcoholics and they're sponsoring addicts and alcoholics, and I've gotten to see this whole family grow around me. I've sat at AA meetings here where I'm there with my sponsor, his sponsor, my sponsee, their sponsee. We're all at a table. It's like a family. This is the experience an addict or alcoholic is not going to want to miss. Seeing that family grow around them, sharing good information in a world of AA where there's so much horrible information. Oh, you never recover. You're always recovering. Easy does it. Play the tape back. Da, da, da. None of that works. This works. And none of that's in here. So that is the biggest gift. I had a guy at the treatment center came up to me after I spoke there years ago and said, I'm going on 9 years sober. January 26, 2014 is my sober date. So I'm 8.5 years sober, just to let you know. He said, man, I like that stuff you were talking, man. I'd love for you to sponsor me, but I live out of state. I said, I don't care where you live, man. I said, hit me up when you leave here. I'd be honored to sponsor you. He hit me up. We went through all 12 steps out of the book through FaceTime or Skype or whatever it was. I think it was FaceTime. And he's now sober in his state, carrying this message, not my message, this message, sponsoring alcoholics. That is the biggest gift in the world to see. So that's why I'm here, to started this channel, making this video, because I would be honored for anybody who's a real addict or alcoholic. If you reach out to me, you have my email below, I would be honored to guide you through these steps. Like somebody was there to offer themselves to me. I'm here to offer myself to you so you don't have to search for a sponsor. I've sponsored people through the channel already. It's the biggest gift ever, and I'm super blessed to share my experience with you. I can only share so much through this open talk, because I only have so, the experiences I went through were insane, and I am so blessed to be here to talk about it. So, from racial riots in jails to surviving state prison as a Jewish person to, drug addiction, heroin addiction, hospitalizations. And it's like a whole different life. I can't even imagine the life that I've been given today. It's all God. When I'm not talking about God, I'm trying to take credit for things I didn't do. This is all, God is the only way, and spirituality to make it through these, through this disease that I have. So that's what I got for you. I hope you enjoyed it. Please let me know what you think. Leave a comment. God bless all of you. I love you, and thank you. If you were here to hear my story, I'm super appreciative. I love you all. And, hey, that's what I got for you.